Hello everybody, welcome to the Deka Chambers online pupillage event. I'm Louise McCullough. I'll be hosting tonight's event. Over the next hour or so, you'll be introduced to our set of chambers, to Deka Chambers. We'll explain the application process and what we're looking for in applicants. There will be an opportunity for questions, both those submitted in advance when you booked the place, and some of those that are asked today, and they'll be answered. After this introduction, you'll hear from my colleagues. The other speakers are Madeleine Miller, who is top right-hand corner on my screen, but maybe somewhere else on yours, and my colleague Ben Rodgers, who is currently below me on the grid that I'm looking at, but it may be elsewhere for you. Unfortunately, our senior clerk, Jamie Brooks, has unavoidably had to withdraw, but what you will hear about from us is about clerking in chambers and practice management in chambers. So just introducing my colleagues in a little bit more detail. Madeleine Miller is a tenant at Deka Chambers. A tenant is a full-time member of chambers. I'm not going to assume any particularly specialist knowledge from any of you listening in, but some of you may be at the start of your legal career and exploring. So being a tenant in a barrister's chambers means that someone is a permanent member of chambers. They've been called to the bar, they've qualified with their law degree or converted a non-law degree into a law degree with a diploma in legal education, and has studied at one of the bar training providers. Madeleine was a pupil at Deka in the years 2021 to 22 and became a tenant 2.5 years ago. She does a variety of work in all our main practice areas. She will be talking to you about the pupillage year that she had and what you can expect from that, and the pupillage year that pupils with us currently have, and then about the work she is doing as a junior practitioner. Ben Rodgers is a more senior member of Chambers and has been in practice for around 17 years, during which time he's focused his areas of work and specialised. So he's refined his areas of work. He'll be talking about his practice and how it has developed and the sort of work you might be able to expect midway into a thriving career with us. After that, we'll all say a little bit about our experiences of how our clerks have helped to manage and direct our practices and how practice development works at Deka Chambers. Throughout the session, which I've said already will last for about an hour, there will be the opportunity for you to put questions into the Q&A box on Zoom. We have off-screen other members of Chambers present who will be answering throughout, and they include two of our current pupils, Bethany Hutchison and Charlie Stonehill, and they've only been with us since the beginning of October for a few weeks, but already off to a flying start. Please feel free to ask whatever you want about Deka Chambers. There are no silly questions. There are questions you don't know the answer to. The application work, you ask us about Deka Chambers, application process, any related topics, and they will be delighted to answer you. So first I'll give you some information about Deka Chambers, our set of chambers. Deka Chambers is based in London. It's a common law set. Common law means it's a wide mixed practice areas. So our pupils and our junior tenants in their first 3 years are expected to practice across our 3 main practice areas, which are civil, which includes, I'll go into more detail about this, but civil, family law and criminal work. Some will continue with mixed practices beyond their first 3 years. Others will choose to refine their practice areas and specialise. So the result overall is a mix of practice areas, practice groups and tenants who undertake a wide range of work. That can be personal injury, where someone's been injured by somebody else in a tortious way. It can be clinical negligence, where someone has been injured by a medical practitioner in a negligent act. Crime, which is the area I practice in. I'm not going to say it's the best area of practice because I'm not going to be partisan like that. Everybody has their preferences. Family law, which in our case is mostly care work, but it can include private disputes, police work, which can be including disciplinary, travel, which is cross-border, personal injury sometimes, a fascinating area of law, court of protection, where somebody isn't capable of managing their affairs and they need to be put under the court of protection, and we have specialists in that. Property work, inquests where someone has died in unexpected circumstances and the coroner needs to make a decision. We have quite a few of those dealt with in chambers. Inquiries, including, it can be the Lucy Letby inquiry, for example, is such an inquiry. Many more areas. Before October of 22, so just over 2 years ago, we were two distinct sets, albeit complementary ones, 9 Gough Square and 1 Chancery Lane. And we merged at the beginning of October 22 and became Deka. 9 plus 1 equals 10. Deka is Greek for 10, for those of you of a classical bent. We now have more than 100 barristers, so quite a few, in a very modern building just off Chancery Lane. There are 17 King's Counsel, KCs, so-called, or silks, people that have upgraded from being a senior junior to a silk. And they have an even wider, and as a merged set, we have an even wider variety of work. This year, this pupillage round, we are seeking pupils to start pupillage in the autumn of 2026, so just under 2 years' time. We offer funding, which we hope is competitive. We offer funding worth £65,000 over the course of the pupillage year. The first half, your non-practicing half of your pupillage, the first half is paid in instalments, 50% instalments, so half of 65,000 for the first 6 months, in monthly instalments. In the second half, the rest is made up of guaranteed earnings based on receipts. So what that means is when you're starting off on your feet, your receipts will take a while to come in. You will still receive the same monthly stipend, if you like, as you received in your first 6. But once your receipts start to pick up, Chambers will top up if you do not reach the monthly earnings. So that's how it works. It's guaranteed earnings. So at the end of the year, you will have received, as a pupil, you will have received the full 65,000. We do allow some of the money. So if you're in financial need before you start pupillage with us, you can apply, ask, and it would be almost certainly granted to draw down money prior to the pupil starting. But that would be against your first 6 money. So do make sure that you don't ask for 50% in advance, because then you would have to eke yourself out for the first 6 months. If that makes sense. I probably haven't explained it very well, but I think you're intelligent people, so you do understand. Okay, so, but make sure you have enough to live and work on, budget accordingly. So many of you, I no doubt will want to know what the terms of the application process is. So we look for people who want to have and are willing to develop a common law practice. That's the baseline. Last year, we updated our website to include much more information. So if you go onto the Deka website in the pupillage drop-down box, you'll have much more information about our application process. And there are 6 pages of information which you can go to, as I've said, by going onto the dekachambers.com website and clicking on the pupillage tab, and then under the careers tab at the top right. We have our own application form, and I would encourage you to look at it, take some time working on it, not leaving it to the last minute. And I know you're all under time pressure, but the earlier you start looking at it, the better it will be. Then you submit the application form, the Deka's own application form, via our website onto our dedicated application system through the website. So what will be clear to you from what I've just said is we're not a gateway set. So we're not one of the 12 that you need. You can choose us outside your list on Gateway. But we do advertise on the gateway because all sets are required to do that. All right, okay. Applications are anonymised and they're marked on paper. So there's a paper sift. And then there is a shorter, so 15-minute, 20-minute first round interview. I think usually the first weekend in March. And there is information about how the first round interview works also on our website. So do have a look there. So the people in conducting the first round interview do not know what your paper sift score is. Okay, it's blind in that sense as well. But we combine the scores from your paper sift to the first round interview. And then we put that together to decide who goes through to the second round interviews, which we do this because we think that the skills a candidate shows on paper or demonstrates on paper can be different in some ways from the skills that he or she shows in an interview. So if you progress, and I hope you will, you go through to a longer second round interview, which involves a structured advocacy exercise, and the longer interview is the basis on which we make offers. And again, there is information, more information on the website about the second round, so I commend that to you as well. All the way through the process, we genuinely, I know people say this, we genuinely want you to give off the best. We want you to have the best opportunity to showcase your skills and suitability for the role. We don't have any minimum academic standard beyond what the Bar Standard Boards requires, and their Bar Handbook says that any barrister must have a 2-2, lower second degree or higher, So the minimum is 2-2 or higher. Our position is that as long as you have a 2-2 in law or have converted a non-law degree through the GDL, as long as you have that, you will be in a position to have done the bar course and as long as you, sorry, long day. As long as you will have been in a position to have done the bar course by the start of pupillage, so you'll finish your bar course and passed it by the time you start pupillage with this, that's enough for us. We don't look at your pure academic qualifications beyond that. So I hope that provides some reassurance to those that may not feel they have got the highest grades possible. So we take the view that whilst academic performance might be an indicator of analytical capacity and ability, one is not the same as the other. So academic smarts and street smarts aren't necessarily the same. We've identified the criteria that we think indicates a person has the potential to be a good common law barrister, and we focus on those instead. So our criteria, again on the website, but 1, analytical ability. What does that mean? Well, it's understanding things, identifying what's important and relevant, devising compelling arguments, evaluating counter arguments, that sort of thing. Second criterion, expression and persuasion. So communicating clearly, arguing well, the skill of advocacy. 3, practical professional skills, research, working with others. Managing a practice includes timekeeping and prioritising, being reliable, doing what you're saying you're going to do, and capable of working alone. And that's not everybody's cup of tea. And finally, motivation, perhaps in some respects the most important thing. But motivation both to come to the bar and to have and to develop a common law practice, at least in the first years. Throughout the application process, we also check that there is no lack of integrity or significant lack of judgment. And at the final stage, we also assess your understandings of the realities of the job, both the positives and the negatives. At all stages, we will consider requests for reasonable adjustments. And over the years, we've had many, and as a result, we have interviewed hundreds of candidates from a wide variety of backgrounds. The point of all of this is we want to have the broadest possible base of applicants. Sorry, as I just, my took my camera off, to have the best possible chance of selecting the best possible candidates with the most potential. That's what we're looking for, looking into the future. So finally, for me at this point, some dates. Our application window is the same as the Pupillage Gateway timetable. It will open on the 2nd of January and close on the 6th of February. So I do encourage you to think early. We will then review all candidates' application forms and notify those that we are inviting to a first round interview. We will try to be accommodating and fixing the times of the interviews, though we cannot guarantee anything, but we will do our best. And as mentioned earlier, and I cannot emphasize enough, we are open to making reasonable adjustments. The first round interviews this coming year, I can see by looking at the date, is Saturday the 22nd of March. So do pencil that into your diaries as well. The second round interview dates have not yet been fixed, but we intend to publish them before the application window opens, so we have the longest possible notice. I hope this has been useful to you. If you have any questions about our process, please look at our website or type in your questions, as I see some of you have already been doing, into the Q&A box. Thank you all for the typed questions so far. I'll now hand over to Madeleine to speak about pupillage and the early years of tenancy. Thank you very much, Madeleine.
Thanks, Louise. So I'm sorry. So I'm going to talk about pupillage and the first couple of years of tenancy. So in your first 6 months of pupillage, it's divided up between civil, family and crimes, who are 3 main areas. And you'll get a supervisor for each of those areas. Obviously, what you spend most time doing with each of those supervisors will depend on their specialism. So for me, my civil supervisor had a specialism in admiralty work and clinical negligence. So that's what I did with that. But there's a whole range depending on who you get. But you also do get the opportunity to do some work for other members of chambers as well. But there's no sense of, you have to do a piece of work for every member of chambers or something. Your supervisors will set the work for you to do. That work is, so you do get pieces of written work that you do throughout the year. You will then get feedback on that. That's written feedback, which you then use as your tenancy application. So that's particulars of claim, defences, advices, and then that's for crime and civil, sentencing notes, and then for family, position statements, draft orders, skeleton arguments, that kind of thing. You also will be having advocacy sessions in your first 6 months. Those are monthly in chambers with members of chambers. They're not assessed in the first 6 months. They're really friendly. They're the types of things that you will be doing in practice. So like an interim care order application, an application for relief from sanctions, a bail application. And it's a chance to really learn from your mistakes and to get some feedback from friendly members of chambers at a stage when you're not actually doing it on your feet. So I found that massively, massively helpful. Then towards the end of the first 6, you start shadowing sort of more junior members of chambers, to ensure that you've seen the kinds of hearings that you're going to be doing when you get on your feet. So small claims hearings, possession hearings, CPS prosecution lists, interim care order applications. And that was really, really helpful for me, because then by the time I was on my feet, I'd actually seen most of the hearings that were then going into my diary at least once, so I didn't feel like it was a total unknown quantity. In your second 6 months, you get another 4th supervisor who may well be in any practice area or may still practice in a number of areas. You'll be on your feet, so you'll be appearing in court yourself, obviously. The division of work is pretty equal between all of the practice areas. You don't get civil paperwork in your second 6 months, and similarly, you don't do cases on conditional fee agreements. The reason being that Chambers thinks it's good for you to get some experience of civil work before you're being asked to take the risk of doing work accidentally for free if the prospects aren't good enough. And that was a really good thing for me as well. So it allows you to sort of get a feel for things before you start making those big decisions. You continue on with the monthly advocacy sessions, but these ones are assessed, so you get formal feedback from the advocacy assessors. And again, you use that as part of your tenancy application. But they're still very friendly and nice. It doesn't really feel very different, except that you're getting formal feedback. And you continue doing some written work, much less, because you are doing your own work while you're in Second Six, but you can supplement it. And the idea is that by the time you get to the end of pupillage, you'll have a portfolio of most of the pieces of written work that people tend to do in chambers. So you can demonstrate the full breadth of your ability and experience, and also you've had a stab at all of the kinds of written work you're likely to have to do. So the support available over pupillage, you've obviously got your 4 supervisors. All of the juniors in chambers we tend to all be in chambers quite a lot. Everybody's really friendly. We always create a WhatsApp group with the very most junior tenants for the pupils to be on and ask the absolute silliest questions that you really don't know the answers to. I always found that helpful to have a sounding board for those, but also you can contact anyone remotely and speak to anyone in chambers. Everybody will just drop everything and answer your question if you need it. The clerks obviously manage the workload, and we'll talk more about the function of the clerks in a minute. You also have various committees you can talk to if there are any issues arising. So you've got the pupillage committee, you've got the EDI committee, lots and lots of people who are signposted for you to go to. The overwhelming thing for me about joining chambers was how much fun it is. It's really nice. All the people are really nice. There are sort of dinners and drinks with different practice groups. The juniors tend to go to the pub after work sometimes. It's just a nice, friendly environment. So I'm in my 2nd year of full-time practice post-tenancy decision now, coming up to the end of that 2nd year. No, I'm coming up to the end of my 3rd year. Sorry. Good. And I want to talk a little bit about what that kind of work is. So there is no typical week in the first few years of tenancy. Genuinely, you're always doing a mix of all of the main areas. Normally, you're in court 4 or 5 times a week, I'd say. The typical work, obviously, Louise touched on this a little bit. Civil, small claims, then you start doing fast track trials. You also move on to multi-track advices and matters pretty quickly. And so more complicated stuff, mixture of claimant and defendant work. We do RTAs, employers' liability, travel, lots and lots of civil stuff, inquests and inquiries. You can also expect to do quite a lot of possession hearings at the junior end. When you're doing civil work as well, you get paperwork supervisors from the civil team. So that's 2 people who look at the pieces of paperwork you do before they get sent to the solicitor, and that's available for the first couple of years after you become a tenant, which was the biggest comfort to me. So I knew that what advice I was giving had somebody cast their eye over it before it went to the solicitor. So in case I said anything really silly, it was picked up. You'll also do police work. So that's civil order applications, sexual risk orders, stalking protection orders, proceeds of crime, inquest for the police. We also do some condemnation of goods work for border force. All of that kind of stuff is really interesting because it's you do it at a very junior level, but you can often end up engaging quite complicated issues. For example, I did a proceeds of crime hearing really early on where I was actually engaging with quite a lot of digital material and like EncroChat material, which you would not come across in crime until much later. Family work, mostly public children. Mostly local authority at the start, especially, but there is some parent and guardian work later. We also do a fair bit of private children. There's a small amount of matrimonial finance work available as well. And you'll be doing cases all the way through proceedings, interim hearings, case management hearings, issues resolution hearings, final hearings, fact findings, but you'll mostly be doing the sort of interim ones and case management ones at the beginning. And there's a real range of subject matter with that. Quarter protection, a lot of welfare stuff, a lot of property and affairs stuff, a lot of deprivation of liberty. Again, vast majority of that work is local authority. And finally, crime. We do a mixture of prosecution and defence, but mostly prosecution. You start out doing CPS lists in the mags, and then you move on to Crown Court work. And so, for instance, by the time you're at my stage, I only really do Crown Court work. So what I did was I looked at my diary from the last 3 weeks to just give you guys a sense of what kind of work I'm doing. I thought it would be helpful to see what a junior tenant actually does. So this week, I've had a fast track trial, which was a road traffic accident involving actually really serious injuries. I had a conference for an inquest I'm doing next week in which I'm representing a local authority. And I've had a High Court application, which is for declarations under the inherent jurisdiction, which is really interesting. It's when a child is going to be adopted, a local authority is normally under statutory obligations to contact family members and to assess them. And you have to apply to the High Court for a declaration that you don't have to do that in circumstances where it would be harmful to the child or the mother normally, if the family was to be notified, for example, in cases of honour violence. Last week, and then I'm at a conference for the rest of the week. Last week, I had a Crown Court trial, perverting the course of justice, about somebody who was on remand and decided to start making calls to the complainant, trying to get them to drop their evidence. And that's an interesting one because it involved interesting legal argument on abuse of process as well. Then the week before that, I was doing an inquest, another one representing a local authority. I had an application to dismiss in one of my criminal trials, which was not successful, and I'm prosecuting, so that was good. And I had a family hearing in adoption proceedings as well. And in amongst that, I've also been doing paperwork. So I've done some advices on evidence for the CPS. I've been making decisions on prospects of success in civil claims, so some prison claims, road traffic, clinical negligence, employer's liability. I've been writing some advices and doing some drafting of particulars. I've drafted some sentencing notes for some of my Crown Court matters that are coming up for sentence, and I've also written an article for Chambers' website. So that's what I've been doing. It's a lot, it's busy, it's never boring. But there's no expectation that you're going to work yourself into the ground. Every time I felt a little bit, stressed, I've just had a conversation with the clerks and they've said, let's make this work for you. The clerks have also been really receptive to times when I've wanted to explore something in my practice. Obviously, I'm still in the first 3 years, so the idea is that you still do everything. But at the moment, I'm sort of looking to explore family and COP a little more, and they've been totally receptive to that. Many people actually do continue on doing all areas of practice past the 3-year point. And that's the thing that's so great about Chambers, is that there's this flexibility. You can do what you like and you can do a bit of everything. And the idea is that anyone can muck in and cover a hearing, certainly at the junior end. I also think, for me, one of the things that is really interesting is that I think I started Pupillage thinking that I might have a civil slant eventually. And at the moment, I'm thinking actually family and COP I'm finding really interesting. And my view is that not everybody comes out of the womb knowing they want to do shipping. That certainly wasn't the case for me. It was only when I started practicing in all those areas that I really understood what I was good at and what I enjoyed. It's really normal in Chambers to take holiday, make time for your life, make time for the things you enjoy doing. It's normal, it's encouraged. You're a better barrister if you look after yourself and your well-being. And there's also a really good understanding of reasonable adjustments. The clerks have been super open to understanding how they can make your practice work for you. So do you need to sort of have a day to do something? Do you need to sort of pull back on something for a little bit? They're really receptive to all of that. So that's been my experience. I'm going to hand over to Ben. I'm just going to turn my sound off, so you turn your sound on, Ben.
Right.
Thanks.
Oh, the feedback there. Hello. So I hope I'm off mute. My name is Ben Rodgers. I am a barrister in Chambers. I was called to the bar in November 2007, so 17 years ago this month. I did pupillage in these chambers in 2007 to 8. and I've been a tenant since October 2008, so 16 years. Until 2011, I practiced in crime, family, and what we call civil, in the way that Madeleine's been describing. Civil meaning anything that isn't family or crime. And so there was lots of landlord and tenant business disputes, car crashes and minor injury claims. From 2011 to 2013, I practiced in family and civil. So I stopped doing crime in about 2011. And then from 2013, when I was about 6 years cool, I stopped doing family and practiced only in what we call civil. So mostly personal injury and clinical negligence cases, but there were some other things as well. And I suppose that one of the things that I can usefully talk about is why it was that I specialised into civil and away from family and crime. The first thing to say is that I'm immensely proud of the work that I did in family and crime before 2013. In many ways, what I did in those fields is among the work that I'm most proud of over these 16 years. In crime, my first ever trial, and I still dine out on this and enjoy telling people about it. Sorry if I'm doing that now, but my first trial in the Crown Court was at the Old Bailey, on Court 3 of the Old Bailey. His Honour Judge Pontius, a 2-day trial. There just aren't many barristers who do the type of work that I do, personal injury and clinical negligence, who can say that. Shortly after that, I prosecuted 2 soldiers who had robbed a tourist during a drunken weekend in London. And I flew to Germany several times to represent servicemen who found themselves in front of the court-martial attached to the British base at Paderborn. In my family work, one of the most interesting cases I did was a very long-running case representing a father in a contact dispute where it was alleged that he had sexually touched an older child of the family. And another really interesting family case I did was representing a mother of 4 children who had admitted to having had a sexual relationship with the neighbour's, the next door neighbour's 12-year-old son. And these cases involve issues of a seriousness and complexity that people who are doing pupillages in chambers that only do the work that I do now simply will not see during their first 5 years, and to tell the truth, may not ever see ever in their careers. And so I don't regret my family and criminal work. I think it has been it's been a pillar on which my development as a lawyer and as an advocate has rested. So from 2013 to 2020, I was practicing only in civil. Like I said, mostly PI, but there were some other things, which I suppose broadly you could call business disputes. So for a couple of examples, I represented a dodgy landlady who didn't realise it was against the law to throw all of her tenants' belongings out of the house and change the locks. I did a very interesting trial in a computer services contract dispute, which required me to learn all about how Microsoft Exchange mail servers work. I represented a plant hire company which had been caught red-handed paying bribes to a construction company who was their client. I represented a couple who had fallen out with their friends over running an Italian restaurant in Broadstairs in Kent. And I represented a man who owned hundreds of residential flats in London, but had moved to Thailand for reasons that weren't entirely clear, and was trying to get a judgment set aside 3 years after it had been entered. And so I did all sorts of really interesting things that sort of spiced up my life and kept me on my toes. But since 2020, I've really specialised only in personal injury and clinical negligence. So what were my reasons for specialising in that way? Honestly, I couldn't do it all. And I am so grateful to be in a set of chambers with people like Madeleine who can do it all. It's immensely impressive. 3 sets of procedural rules. I found it too difficult in the first few years, crime, family and civil. 3 sets of expert areas. So crime was all about policing and criminal evidence, family was all about social work, and civil law was all about civil procedure. And I just found that although I could do it during the first 6 years, as the cases became even more weighty and complex and the issues became more and more fundamental to the lives of the people who were involved in the litigation, I found that I was able to offer to be of most service, representing people in a smaller pool of different types of dispute, which ended up being civil disputes generally, and now since about 2020 has been personal injury and clinical negligence cases. The reason for choosing personal injury back then was really the people around me. We have really strong whirlwind barristers who get amazing amounts of work done in the personal injury and clinical negligence fields and are absolutely at the top of their game. My roommates in chambers were a really strong influence upon me in whittling it down in that direction towards personal injury and clinical negligence. And the reason I'm happy with it now, although I would like to be more broad if I had been able to, the reason why I'm happy with doing personal injury and clinical negligence is that I like to help people. I essentially work for individuals against large corporations, mostly insurance companies. I'm essentially an insurance lawyer, but I act for the individual because I'm mostly representing claimants. It's therefore quite tough commercial work, but it's always about one person and the kind of life that they have to have now that something has gone wrong for them in their lives. And so just as an example of the type of cases that I've been doing recently, I recently settled the case of a man who worked for an airline and had caught malaria in Ghana and nearly died, and brought a claim against his employer, the airline, which involved all sorts of really difficult issues, as you can imagine, in demonstrating that it was the employer's failure to take reasonable care of his safety that caused him to contract malaria. And I was against eminent King's Counsel in that case, and the airline really didn't want to pay, but they did in the end. And another case I've done recently is representing a woman who broke her neck in a car accident, had no feeling or motion below just the base of her skull, and needed 24-hour care. That was a really interesting case in which a silk in chambers, a King's Counsel in chambers, led me. So that means I did the basic drafting work and they gave the main advice. Another case I've got on at the moment is representing a care worker who suffered a very severe life-changing brain injury when he was beaten up by a disabled teenager who he was looking after, and he wishes to bring a claim against his employer for not taking care of his to give him a safe workplace. And another really heartbreaking case that I have on at the moment is representing the family of a 19-year-old lad who was on his way to pick up his laptop from the repair shop in order to go to university the next week, and was run over and killed by a rubbish lorry. And the owners of the rubbish lorry really don't think it's their fault. And we may be having a trial in that case soon. So I now have a niche. I have an area of work that that I feel like I'm able to offer a service to people that I know something about that area of legal practice. And I think that our aim in life as lawyers is to have skills that people need. So I think I'm really grateful that in these chambers I've been able to develop a niche and to have a way of helping people by using the skills that I've developed over the years. One thing I would remind you of those, to remember that advocacy is a skill that people need, advocacy in the abstract. So advocacy is advocacy, whether you are in the family court or the Crown Court or the county court, and people need that skill. It would be a useful niche for any of you to develop. I think I've got a little bit more time to fill. I haven't been running my stopwatch, but not much time. So I think that the best thing about being in these chambers is undoubtedly being surrounded by people who are unbelievably clever and good at what they do. They push me all of the time to be better. We've got incredible junior tenants, and we've also got King's Counsel who are on first name terms with half of the senior judiciary, and household names like my former pupil master, Tom Little, King's Counsel, amazing raconteurs and public speakers like Jacob Levy, King's Counsel, our head of chambers, and people who go on to become judges themselves like Mr. Justice Ritchie. If I'd gone down literally any other road that was open to me in my early 20s, I wouldn't be surrounded by such clever people. I'm quite certain of that. So I have had a whale of a time being in Deka Chambers over these 16 years, and I commend it to you. I have some other things I can say if we run out of time, but I think it's probably best.
We'll save them. We'll save them for
hand over. Is it back to you, Louise?
It is, just temporarily. Thank you, Ben. Fascinating. Genuinely, both you and Madeleine, I could listen to you all night. We're on a bit of a time limit, so I'm going to move on now to talking about clerking. This is a slot that would have been occupied by our senior clerk. Perhaps if each of us just talks for about 2 minutes as to how the clerks help us. Now, because I'm quite long in the tooth, and I've already to a degree built my practice, what the clerks do is help me manage that practice. It's very rare that I go to them saying, please get me some work. More often than not, I'm saying, if a case has gone short, someone has pleaded guilty, or a case has been taken away from the list for a lack of judicial time, I will say to the clerks, please give me time to do either paperwork so that I'm not in court for the next day or two, or as Madeleine said, protecting my well-being by having a day or two away from work altogether. They are excellent at that. Sometimes I'm double booked on a given day, but with a bit of adjustment, I can cover a case at 10 and then another one later on in the day, or maybe a third case later on in the day. So the clerks, and particularly our junior criminal clerk, is excellent at badgering list officers to get things accommodated. The clerks also do billing, so I will give them cases that are concluded, because in crime you only really get paid at the conclusion of the case, and they will do the billing for me. And then there'll be sounding boards, and as Madeleine has also said, if you want to develop an area of law, you go to the clerks, you chat to them. We have regular practice meetings, usually annually, but you can pop into the clerks from pretty much any day of the week. Pretty much any time of the day, albeit the end of the day are quite taxing for the clerks because they're trying to finalise everybody's diary for the following day. And they're friendly, approachable, and they want the best for you too. So that's my comments for now on the clerks. I'll hand you back to Madeleine.
So in contrast to Louise's experience, obviously the clerks have a different role in shaping my practice, in that at the junior end, the clerks are how you get work. You don't have a sort of self-sustaining practice yet. Obviously, that's something that you develop. So the clerks fill my diary. That's how that works. Obviously, I am in the process of developing some relationships with solicitors, and so sometimes you get re-instructed for things, and sometimes you develop that relationship, but it's still in its sort of infancy. The first year for the clerks is all about creating a balance. The first couple of years, as Louise said, you have annual practice development meetings, but it's absolutely possible to have more than that. And as I touched on earlier, first few years, it's about trying to keep you in court, doing all of the different areas as much as possible. But for example, in my last practice development meeting, I said I'd like to have a go at some inquests a bit more. And as you'll have all seen when I mentioned earlier, I am doing that. So they really listen. Also, the clerks do a lot of business development stuff and helping with that. So the clerks have given me a real steer on what kind of things to attend, what kind of things to focus on in terms of business development. So I mean like your outward facing stuff that's going to attract solicitors to you mainly. Certainly the system that works well for me is that the clerks just add business development stuff to my diary, and then I can take out the stuff I don't want to do because I find that really helpful. Also, the juniors, they often will help organise events with really junior solicitors, because those are the people that you're going to grow up with, and by the time you're senior, those junior solicitors are going to be partners. So it's good to start those relationships at the junior end. For example, recently we did a bake-off themed event where we all invited a junior solicitor from the family team. So that was really fun. So I would say at my stage, that's what the clerks do.
Excellent, thank you, Ben.
I'll say something now about
Yes,
what the clerks do in my practice. So in my area of work, personal injury and clinical negligence, there are two streams by which work comes to me. One stream is relationships with only a handful really of solicitors, relationships that I've built up over these 16 years that I've been in Chambers. Maybe half a dozen, 10 solicitors who instruct me regularly. That's the mainstream of work that I conduct, I carry out. It's not quite enough to keep me working full time. And so the second stream is what people sometimes call chambers work, or unallocated work that comes into Chambers where solicitors are not asking for me, but asking for Deka Chambers because of the reputation that it has in the fields of work that I do, personal injury and clinical negligence. And the clerks are very helpful in channeling work to me when I have gaps in my diary, on the rare occasions when I have gaps in my diary. And the clerks have helped me out a great deal over these 16 years. First of all, in putting me in touch with those dozen solicitors who now keep me busy, but also to constantly find new sources of work to keep me busy. So, my relationship with the clerks is mostly that they're managing my diary and looking out for opportunities for me, but also they're carrying out business development and identifying new prospective sources of work. I don't know. There's much more to say, really.
Oh, that's terrific. It's just, I think it's helpful for people coming into the profession to know this symbiotic relationship. You need to have a good relationship with your clerks. We're very lucky with our clerks at Deka. So we've got a few minutes left of the hour, and I know some of you have sent questions in. Madeleine, do you have the list of questions? All right. So Madeleine, you ask the questions, and then Ben and I will pitch in with answers if we feel the need.
So thanks everyone for sending in your questions, and I've got some of them. I'm going to be able to answer some of them, and then some of them I'll refer to Louise and to Ben. So first question is, do you offer mini pupillages? The answer is yes. We run the mini pupillage application window after making pupillage offers. This is so you know whether you need more experience at that stage. If you get an offer of pupillage, then you obviously won't need a mini pupillage. We'll open our mini pupillage application window in May or June 2025, so I can answer that one. Next question. How can I come across as more confident in an interview? What are the techniques to build confidence? Louise, maybe could you answer that one?
Oh, goodness me. I even still suffer from it. I think, right, all right. No, we don't expect perfection. If you're not feeling confident, you do need to sort of think bigger in your head. So, you know, you're all, by the time you've got to an interview, you have got through a selection process, you're a highly qualified person already. So so the voice in your head has to be tuned, I'd say, to I've got this. Okay, and so the things to do to kind of build confidence, you know, it's good to get to the interview early. I know this is going to sound so trite, but it really does help. Breathe out more than you breathe in. Just really reflect on your strengths. That's kind of how you do it, you know. And some people have said to me also, the old saying, fake it till you make it. So sort of, you know, say to yourself, you know, I've got a right to be here. And sort of, as I say, thinking bigger. But it takes a while. I mean, I certainly didn't have a lot of confidence when I started out. I sort of felt, you know, I can do this, but wasn't always demonstrating it. Ben, how do you make yourself feel more confident?
I don't really. I don't think
Good
I'm
man.
massively confident. Try to remember that the people on the interview panel might be almost as nervous as you. I sometimes sit on interview panels and I'm reading your CVs and thinking to myself, my CV wasn't as impressive as this when I was 22, and so or whatever age, and still isn't now. And so, yeah, focus on your strengths and don't. When you read websites, what lots of people do is, and I know this because I've been mentoring somebody. I don't know if you're on the attendance list for today. What people do is they read the website and they put themselves off because they see, oh, these people, they're so clever, and they got such great degrees and they've been practicing for years and years and years. But all of that is just fluff. I mean, it's true. There's nothing on my webpage that is untrue. But there's a way that there are means of presenting oneself in a flattering light. And so don't be put off by slick websites and lawyers presenting themselves slickly, because that's kind of what lawyers do. And you can do it too, if I can.
Really good advice. Madeleine, what's the next question for us?
Okay, so next question, and I can answer this one. Do you consider mature applicants? Yes. So we don't discriminate on the basis of age or, for example, maternity, anything like that. We've recruited lots of people who aren't straight out of university. The applications are anonymised at the SIFT stage, and candidates are advised not to include any identifying information or details of any protected characteristics, and your university and, for example, the date of your degree is held separately and doesn't appear on the form. So the reality is that unless you actively mention your age, the person reading your application form probably won't know it anyway. Okay, next question. How would you describe the work culture at Deka? What do you wish you did before undertaking pupillage? Should we start with Ben for that one, and then Louise, I think, because we've only got 5 minutes left.
I was a roadie before I came to Deka. I was a drum technician for Ian Brown on the Golden Greats tour, which you're a bit niche. You may not know about it. So I did do something before coming to the bar. What's the work culture like? It really varies. There are people who work 80 hours a week. They're very much in the minority. It depends. And this is the great thing about self-employed bar, is you can cut it to suit yourself.
And I just, I love Ben's answer. Just don't, I came to the bar in my mid-20s. I felt under pressure to come at that stage. I think it would have been probably better for me overall to have lived my life a little bit more before coming to the bar, before pupillage. So that's probably my advice, and that may feed in with people worrying about being too old. You're not. All your life experience comes into life at the bar. So I'm going to hand back to you, Madeleine, because we're running down on the time.
No, I think that's really good advice, Louise. I think that the bar is a career where actually life experience is really great. You can always bring something. Okay, What skills and experience do we look for? So Louise has already mentioned the criteria against which we measure and mark applications, and they're set out on our website, so you can refer to them before and during the application process. We take the view that there is no one way to demonstrate a skill, as Louise said, so candidates can rely on whatever experience they have, either in their professional careers, including outside the law, or personal lives. We don't set expectations on any candidate as long as the evidence on the form answers the questions asked and satisfies our criteria. Okay, next question. Again, I'm going to be able to answer this because I'm on our EDI committee. How do you support neurodivergent applicants to give the best of themselves at interview and beyond? So we welcome applications from all candidates, no matter their backgrounds. Over the years, we've made lots of adjustments, various different adjustments, as Louise mentioned, to the process to help candidates who need them. For example, extra preparation time, extra time for certain elements of the interview, changing the layout of the interview room, interviewing by video instead of in person. Those are obviously just examples. We're prepared to be flexible if other requirements arise, obviously. We also offer communication with a member of the Pupillage committee before the interview, so we can get a better understanding of a candidate's requirements before we select and then offer an adjustment. And that's to make sure that we're making the correct adjustment for you and enough of an adjustment to ensure that you have the best opportunity to present your application effectively. So that's something that's really important to us. Question 6, what support is there in place to support tenants with continuing education, CPD, masters, etc. throughout their career? I'm not sure.
Go ahead, Ben, you answer, but I have an answer too. So I'm actually doing a master's at the moment because I've had a bout of insanity, and I've told the clerks that's what I'm doing, and they're totally cool about it, and we're working in partnership. But we do a lot of CPD in chambers for solicitors, which allows you lifelong learning, very much encouraged. Ben or Madeleine, I'm happy to hand over.
Yeah, so barristers are responsible for their own continuing professional development, and we have to show our regulator, the Bar Standards Board, that we've kept up to date with developments in our field every year. So there's a lot of that, but we are self-employed, and so we've ultimately got control over our own timetables. And our colleague Graham has just finished a PhD in maritime history, and if that's what you want to do, you can do it. It fits in around being self-employed.
Brilliant. We're now coming up to the hour. I don't know if we started exactly on 6, but I've got a few wrap-up comments to make. So thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate you giving up your time, especially thanking Madeleine and Ben for answering as they have, for Bethany and Charlie for answering the Q&A session, and for William for organising this, and Emma Williams, our marketing director. So we're happy to receive any further questions. So once it's we stop the webinar, we're still open to answering questions. Please look at the information on our website, homepage, careers, pupillage. We're going to sign off now. This session has been recorded, and it will be available on YouTube fairly soon. So please tell your friends and colleagues who haven't been able to make it today not to worry, just to log on to YouTube and the Deka website. So sorry, a bit late in the day. Thank you all. It's been a thoroughly enjoyable evening, and take good care of yourselves, and hopefully see you at Deka soon. All right, take care.